Today, we're really excited because it's Easter Sunday, obviously, but we're also really excited because our speaker today is Will van der Hart. Will, many of you will know, he's been on team here for a while now, and he is married to Louie. They have 2 kids, and Will is really involved in everything to do with emotional health, spiritual health, and is involved with Nikki and Scylla with the Relationship Central courses, and he's a fantastic guy. He's the perfect guy to be speaking today on Easter Sunday, so please would you welcome Will van der Hart.
Well, I've got to say, I am all about hot cross buns because my kids are so high on sugar right now. I just need them to eat something like sustenance that's going to fill them up, and they're just bouncing around the house at home. And also, Easter eggs are just frustrating because they look so big and yet they're so hollow. Whereas at least with a hot cross bun, I know there's something inside. I guess that's what I want to talk to you about tonight, is the whole idea of empty promises. I think we all hate empty promises. And you know, it's 31 days, 13 hours, 35 minutes, and 38 seconds until the general election. Now, I'm not correlating empty promises with the general election, just to be clear. I think we've got a fantastic democratic process in this country, and I'm delighted by that. I'm thankful for that. But you know, it's at this time when every political party feels the pressure to make bigger and bigger promises. And it is really tricky because they know that if they make bigger promises, they're more likely to get more votes. But at the same time, they've got to stick to their guns and actually produce answers. They've got to make their promises real when they're in office. So it's dangerous to make too big a promise, since you might not be able to fulfill your promises. And it's also important and dangerous not to under-promise. Because if you don't offer anything to anyone, no one's going to be voting for you. So they're on this kind of tightrope, all trying to outgun one another, but concerned about what's going to happen next. And then we hear big promises made about the health service, or the council's promise to repair our street lights, or the potholes in our roads, whatever it is. And sometimes in life, we find that those promises aren't fulfilled. It might be in a relationship, or it might be something grand like election time, or it might be in your office, or it might be related to your experience in work or friendship. But empty promises really hurt. They're really painful. But you hear them made all the time. You know, it's interesting about the election, just to pick it up a little bit with positive. Since 1945, the actual level of broken promises has remained less than 20%. Isn't that remarkable? Some good stuff going on out there in politics. I want to tell you tonight, there's even better news where empty promises are concerned, because the world might be offering us things it can't fulfill. Only cheap eggs are empty. Today I want to show you that the emptiness that God provides in the empty tomb and the empty cross and the empty grave clothes was paid for with the richest price. The world's constantly offering us promises full of emptiness, but God has given us an emptiness that's full of promise, if we can just grab a hold of it on this special Easter afternoon. There are 3 empty signs I want to talk about. Why is it every priest always wants to roll out something in 3s? Something's nice about that. I like it anyway. But we're going to go for 3 empty promises, as I mentioned: the empty cross, the empty tomb, and the empty burial clothes. Then their emptiness that fills us with the certainty of God's promise of assurance, his presence with us. So let's look at these 3 in turn. The Christian word we often hear bandied about at this time is atonement. And there's lots of different ways of theologically understanding atonement, but I just like to break it down into syllables: at one ment. At one ment. The idea of bringing together 2 halves that have been enemies at loggerheads with one another into a relationship, a place of peace and a place of friendship. And on the cross, Jesus was sacrificed for our sins so that we as sinners could be reconciled with a perfect and loving God. In Romans 5, 8-11 it says, "But God demonstrated his own love towards us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than that, now having been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from the wrath through him. For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, how much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life." Tonight, we are celebrating the emptiness of the cross. the way by which God has brought us at one-ment with him. You know, I was thinking about Jesus' death and looking at the history of the period, and so many people were crucified, and I was thinking, but what was so specific, what's so powerful, what's so significant about this crucifixion? I mean, obviously, there is something unique going on here, something absolute about life. The cross is the most emotive, if you like, and the fullest symbol of death, because Jesus died the fullest death that anyone has ever died. You might wonder what I mean when I say the fullest death, since you'd think that death is death. But I believe that the Bible points clearly to the fullness of humanity that resided in Jesus beyond a humanity that we can experience, that Jesus was more fully alive. He was the fullness of God in creation in this man. You could say that in order to die fully, you have to be fully alive. And Jesus was the fullness of humanity. He was alive in the way that no one else has ever been alive, untouched by sin and corruption. Isaiah says that he was without blemish. Not only are we convinced that the physical death that Jesus endured was the most painful and absolute execution, but we also know that Jesus' spiritual death was complete separation from the Father, a cutting off once and for all. The symbol of the empty cross reminds us of this absolute death of Jesus that gives us one-ment with God, but it also demonstrates that Jesus did not stay nailed to a cross. No, it's a strange symbol that we carry around in our ears, around our necks, a symbol of a mode of execution. You know, this horrific symbol, but the hope is in its emptiness. There's no one hanging on your cross. There's no body nailed to that cross, because that is an empty cross. The body of Christ brought down off the cross, a symbol of death, filled with hope because it's filled with emptiness. We know if the cross is the symbol of the act of dying, the tomb is clearly the symbol of the irrevocable continuum of death. I feel like it's much more depressing, the tomb. The cross seems to go somewhere, but the tomb goes nowhere. When I was a teacher, I used to love teaching the bit about Tutankhamun. I don't know if you know Tutankhamun, but he was a young Egyptian king. And I had a whole thing going on about the Egyptians. I thought it was a brilliant thing to teach kids. They always loved it. And there's all sorts of things you could make and do relating to Tutankhamun, which is also very exciting. But I used to love showing them the books and the slides of what it means to go into the tomb and how these various archaeologists burst through. I think Lord Carnarvon, someone probably connect me from Highclere Castle, and he broke through, and you know he knocked out this wall that the grave robbers of old didn't know was there, and they burst into this antechamber, and it was filled with all of these incredible things, most of which are now in the British Museum, I think. Shh, no one tell them. You know, it's bursting full of stuff, and it's amazing. It's really exciting, and I used to get them really excited about what it was to find treasure, you know, to be a tomb raider, to find out what was underneath the pyramids. And even today, people are searching around in the Valley of the Kings to try and find another tomb filled with stuff. The tomb speaks of nothing other than the fact that death just goes on and on and on. The Egyptian tombs, thousands of years after the pharaoh's burial and belief that they would be resurrected with all of these important belongings, just geeky archaeologists uncover them and nick their stuff and stick it behind glass. That's it. Full tombs, full of stuff, but completely devoid of hope. Listen to Luke 24:2. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find a body, the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. And in their fright, the women bowed down their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living amongst the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men to be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Then they remembered his words. In an Easter Sunday school class, all of the children were given an empty plastic egg. I've been doing this in the garden with my children this afternoon. It's a very economic way of recycling eggs and providing a limited number of eggs at the end of the day for consumption. And all the children were told to go out into the garden to find something that would remind them of Easter, and then to put it into the plastic egg and bring it back into the Sunday school room. And they picked up all various things: pretty flowers, birds' feathers, little pieces of rock to note the stone that rolled in front of the tomb. And then a boy called Philip offered his egg to the teacher, and she opened it, and there was nothing inside. And all the other children were going, "Oh, you didn't get it right. You're supposed to put something inside it. You're meant to put something inside the egg. Not just go out and wander around in the garden, Philip." But you know, Philip protested, and he said, "I meant to leave it empty because the tomb was empty." You know what? A few weeks later, Philip, who was only 8 years old, died of a congenital disease. And at the funeral service, all of the other children brought an empty egg and laid it on top of his small coffin as a reminder that the tomb was empty. Even in death, there was hope of resurrection life, an empty egg, an empty tomb, a full promise of a risen life. You know, the cross isn't the way we're going to die. At least I hope not. But the tomb is the 100% statistic. It's the one thing you can be certain of when you're born. And I want you to know tonight that the empty tomb is God's promise to us, that even if we enter the tomb, death cannot hold us because it could not hold Jesus Christ. Father and son were driving down the motorway. And you know how it is in the summer, you put your windows down and you're wondering why, because it's really loud, and every so often something comes into the window which you didn't expect. And at this point, father and son on the outside lane were driving along full speed, and then suddenly there's a in the car as a bee begins to buzz around, and the boy screams and shouts, and the dad's holding on tightly to the steering wheel thinking, what do we do? There's a bee in the car. And the boy's freaking out and screaming and shouting. It's happened to me once, not with a bee, but with a wasp. And the boy's going, Dad, do something. Dad, there's a bee, Dad. And Dad just reaches out his hand and he grabs the bee and he holds it in his hand. And they begin to slow down, change lanes. And then the dad lets go and opens his hands. And then the bee begins to fly around the car again. Bzzz. The boy says, Dad, what are you doing? Dad, there's the bee, you've let the bee go. And Dad says, son, he says, don't worry. I've taken the sting out of the bee. The bee can't hurt you anymore. Just relax. Bees buzzing around the car, pulled into the hard shoulder, opened the door, and ushered out the bee. You see, the dad took the sting out of the bee. Even though the bee is still buzzing around the car, the bee can't hurt his son anymore. And death's a bit like that. You know, the Father has taken the sting out of death. So even though death is still buzzing around the cars of our lives, we don't need to be afraid anymore. He took the sting out of death into his own body in order that we might not be afraid. Death still buzzes around, but it's hollow. It's an empty threat of a conquered kingdom and a vanquished king. We don't need to live in fear of death anymore because of an empty cross and an empty tomb give us promise of the fullness of God. It says, I am for you. I have made a way for you. In the passage that we've just read in Luke 24:12, Peter gets up following hearing the witness of the women, and he runs to the tomb to find the final promise of emptiness that I want us to consider tonight. It says, Peter got up, ran to the tomb, bending over, he saw strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. He went away wondering what on earth had happened. I guess it's one thing. If you see the empty cross, you're going, hey, they've taken the body down off the cross. You see an empty tomb, you're going, hey, someone's robbed the body of Jesus. You see empty grave clothes, then you're really starting to wonder what is going on. When we think about these grave clothes, they're not kind of personal white towels that you might see hanging on the washing line in my back garden on a warm Saturday afternoon. These were strips of linen that we used to wrap a body tightly. They were muslin cloths soaked in oils and spices, wrapped a skin that was weeping, cuts and bloody wounds of a man who'd been scourged and beaten and whipped. And they'd been applied to this dead body for 3 days in a tomb that was probably in excess of 15 degrees centigrade. It doesn't take too much imagination to get the idea why Peter was baffled. Nobody, surely, would have had any ambition to remove the grave clothes from a body that they'd stolen. Nobody would have the desire to unwrap a body in a tomb. No one would have thought, hey, we don't need these grave clothes, they're surplus to requirement. Why don't we leave them behind and just take the body? If you were going to steal the body, you would have picked up the whole grave package and walked away. But here on the floor of the tomb was empty grave clothes. I know it's a little bit graphic. The point is, though, that these empty grave clothes are a demonstration that Jesus had risen in the flesh. You see, the empty cross speaks of Christ's death for us. The empty tomb speaks of Christ's resurrection and the conquering of death for us. And the empty grave clothes, they speak of the man Jesus. He is alive. He wasn't an apparition. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't just a spiritual presence. He was a physical person, alive, walking in the flesh. He's breathing. And he's breathing into your life today. And this evening, we're here to celebrate what God has done for us on the cross, in the tomb, and the risen life of the person of Jesus Christ. In John 20:15, thinking that he was the gardener, she said to Jesus, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary," and she turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Mary had a face-to-face with Jesus, then the 12, then the 72, and then the 500. The empty grave clothes were God's promise of a face-to-face with mankind. His promise to you tonight is for a face-to-face. He's saying, I am here with you. Out of the emptiness of the grave clothes, the fullness of God came to us. If you remember the disciples on the Emmaus Road, they're the first to experience this fullness. In Luke 24:32, they say, "Were not our hearts burning within us?" Church, tonight I want to say that we can spend a lifetime filling up our tombs with stuff like the Egyptians did. We can fill up our tombs. We can spend a lifetime seeking to acquire stuff, to fill our pockets with things. A friend of mine, an evangelist called J. John, was removed from the will of his father when he became a Christian. He was disinherited, and he went to his father's funeral. And a couple of chaps who were there who knew the situation said to him, "Did he leave you anything? Did he leave anything?" And J. John said, "Oh, he left everything. He left everything. He left everything." We can spend our lives filling up our tombs. And I want to ask you, are your tombs full and your hearts empty? Or are your tombs empty and your hearts full? Jesus Christ entered the world through a door that said no entry, a virgin birth. And he left by a door that said no exit, a sealed tomb. And tonight, on this Easter Sunday, he will take you with him. He will do it. He has done it. He has made a way through the impossible, the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility for your sake. He came into this world for you, And he left these empty places as a sign to you that there is a place waiting for you in heaven. He's saying, come to you, my children. Leave behind empty tombs and carry with you full hearts. See not, did our hearts burn within us? Let's invite his Holy Spirit to come. We're just about to take communion. But just as you're seated, just open your hands for a moment before you as we invite the Lord. Lord Jesus, you came into the world through a sign that said no entry, and you left through a sign that said no exit. And my heart has been both. It's been impenetrable to you. And yet, Lord, I invite you to come in tonight to break down the door where I've been resistant, where I've sought my insurance policies in earthly things. I want to pray now. Come, fill my heart with your love this Easter. Overwhelm me with your Holy Spirit. I want my tomb to be empty, but my heart to be full, that I might live this life for your glory. Lord Jesus, you've left me with an empty cross and an empty tomb and empty grave clothes as a sign of an eternal promise. And I receive that promise now. I pray you'd overwhelm my cynicism, Lord. The pain and the disappointment of broken promises in my past. And fill me with assurance and hope as I take hold of the fullness of life that you've offered me in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, my Lord and my Savior. Amen.